Hello, and welcome to the BCR Dawson sub. This video is intended to be the first of what I hope will be regular updates on my layout progress, beginning with reinstallation of the layout in the new room. This first update will actually cover work undertaken between October and December of 2021, so we'll begin with a look back at the initial room preparations, and then we'll get into work on the actual layout sections. The upper left photograph shows the appearance of the layout room after I took possession of the new apartment on July the 1st. The room was painted white with a bright red accent wall. I opted to repaint the room in the same sky blue color which I had used in the old apartment. For those interested, the color is CC786 Summer Day, which is available from Benjamin Moore. The walk-in closet was also painted, as it will eventually house the staging tracks. After the room was painted, the layout sections were brought over from the old apartment and stored on the floor. Note the build-out for heating pipes along the south wall. This was going to present a challenge in hanging the yard sections along that wall. Our solution was to frame out the wall to match the build-out and then sheathe that with plywood. Plywood allow for easy installation of the shelving uprights. The build-out is shown in brown. The new plywood build-out is shown in yellow, and then the shelving uprights are shown as well. The wall sections were assembled off-site using 3/4 inch plywood, and we used cedar shakes, which have a slight taper to them. These were used as shims to align the wall sections vertically at the top. A long wooden board was used to check the horizontal alignment across the wall sections. The board is actually an 8-foot long carriage board from Southern Region in the UK. The plywood skins were then installed onto the wall sections. And this photograph shows the completed wall sections. Note that there are cutouts for electrical outlets and also a heating zone control valve in the corner. This drawing is for the north wall, and it shows the location of 2x2 posts to bring the benchwork out 2 inches from the wall so that the Fort St. John subdivision can pass behind and along the wall and eventually through the wall into the adjacent room. The 2x2 posts were cut to a length of 4 feet to accommodate the shelving uprights. Several shorter posts were cut for the shorter uprights. These were used in pairs at the 2 locations where the support posts have to be sectioned for the Fort St. John subdivision to pass through. This is the south wall, primed and painted the same shade of blue as the room, and it's now ready for marking of the locations for the shelving uprights. And here are the 2x2 posts, also primed and painted. They've had holes for the mounting screws marked and drilled through, and they are now ready for installation. A laser level was used to establish a consistent height around the room for the shelving uprights. This device was used successfully during the original installation of the shelving uprights back in 2005, and so I wanted to use it again. The laser level projects a red line around the room. Here we are checking the height off the floor with a tape measure as I make adjustments to the laser level. These adjustments are easily made because the laser level is mounted on my camera tripod, so minute adjustments up and down can be made fairly easily. We were aiming for a height of 47.5 inches at the center hole of the uprights. Prior to this, I had marked the horizontal locations for each of the uprights along the wall with a pencil, and here I am transferring those marks up to the line of the laser level. And then I intersected those with the line of the laser level for the vertical alignment. And then at the intersection, I marked the point with an awl to create a pre-drill for the electric drill to follow. And then with holding the uprights in place, a screw was driven through the center hole and into the plywood wall. And here we see several of the uprights along the south wall. And this shows 6 of the 7 uprights with the line of the laser level going through the center hole. At this point, the uprights can be rotated on that center hole, allowing for adjustments to the vertical alignment. So to get that vertical alignment correct, I simply placed a level alongside the shelving upright, and then I used a hammer to gently tap them into place until the level indicated the correct alignment. Once that was done, we then drove the other 4 screws home to fully secure the uprights to the wall. One of the uprights was located on the build-out for the heating pipes, which was drywall. So this required plastic easy anchors to secure the screws into the wall. So what we did is we marked the location for the holes. We then rotated the upright out of position, inserted the anchors into the wall, and then rotated it back into position to install the screws into the anchors. And here we are with 6 of the 7 uprights fully secured to the wall. The 7th is just out of the photograph to the right. At this stage, we installed brackets on the lower level, and the sections for check-wind yard were hung for a test fit. And this showed that the uprights and brackets were spaced correctly, with the layout sections sitting exactly on the brackets as they should. And now over to the north wall. For the 2x2 posts, the holes for the upright mounting screws were drilled. We used a similar method for mounting the posts, except that this wall has drywall rather than plywood, so we need to use anchors. We used the center hole for the upright to establish the correct height, and then I used a level to get the vertical alignment correct. The mounting holes were then carried through into the drywall so that the plastic easy anchors could be installed. The posts were then removed and the wall anchors were inserted into the holes. The post was then repositioned using the center hole for height and a level for vertical alignment, and the remaining screws were then driven home into the anchors. 2 of the uprights had to be sectioned for the Fort St. John subdivision to pass through, so I used shorter uprights with a gap in between top and bottom. To align these shorter posts correctly, the laser level was shifted up to the height of one of the other screws so that the slots would be at the same height as the other posts. Here we see the shorter posts being installed on the wall, and then the shorter uprights going on to the short posts. And this photograph shows the 6 uprights mounted on the north wall, with gaps in 2 of them for the Fort St. John subdivision to pass through. After the posts had been installed on the north wall, the section for the Highway 97 overpass was mounted temporarily on its brackets to check the height of the track against the gaps in the posts. This was to ensure that the combined thickness of the track, the roadbed, the sub-roadbed, and the supporting structure would pass through the gaps between the posts. Here we see a mock-up showing how the Fort St. John subdivision will pass along the wall behind the Highway 97 and the Pine River sections along to the 4th post, at which point it will pass through the wall and into the adjacent room. Now the reason it has to go along the wall is because the adjacent room is shorter in length. The difference is made up by the balcony outside the bedroom, and the wall between the layout room and the balcony is concrete, so we have to bring the tracks along the wall to the point past the concrete where they can then pass through the drywall. And to find that difference between the concrete and the drywall, we used a stud finder, and this was to locate the location where the Fort St. John subdivision can pass through to the other room, which is where the new location for Septimus will be. We used a drywall saw to make nice clean rectangular openings in the drywall, and the initial hole was made small to avoid hitting anything inside the wall. I borrowed a digital video camera scope from my auto mechanic. This is a device that's used to look down into engine bays of vehicles, and this enabled us to look inside the wall before any additional cutting. And it was a good thing we did, because we found an electrical box right next to our opening, which had no reason for being there in the middle of the wall. So it was a good thing that we were able to see that beforehand. And here's a picture of the opening after it's been enlarged. This is from the layout side of the room, and the saw is just starting through the hole in the wall from the other side. And this is looking from the bedroom side. We're using a square to achieve a fairly rectangular opening. Here we see the mock-up again, and this time it extends to the opening in the wall, and I've got a S-curve made up of Atlas set track, 18.75 inch radius, that is positioned through the opening to verify that the track can go through with the opening that's been cut. And this is a closer view of the S-curve extending through the hole into the other room. And this is a view from the bedroom side showing the track curving through. And you can see that there is a void between the two sheets of drywall with the studs in between. And that obviously has the potential for some cars to go down there if they happen to derail. So we're going to need to put some sidewalls on the section going through the wall to ensure that no cars are lost in the void. With the room preparations now complete, it was time to begin work on the layout sections themselves, starting with Chetwynd Yard and Dawson Creek. These are the first sections I wanted to get reinstalled in the new layout room. These were set up on their backs on sawhorses for ease of working on the wiring underneath. Here we see the sections for Chetwynd Yard on their backs, with the lighting canopies for Dawson Creek temporarily installed above to give me some work lights. Underneath Chetwynd, the track bus wires were originally terminated with heat shrink, as you can see in the top left photograph. I replaced this with terminal blocks so that the track bus can be extended over to the new section of the yard that's going to be built. The auxiliary bus was shortened back to the rear of the layout and also fitted with a terminal block for eventual extension. The passage holes for all the wiring was also enlarged. And this was a lesson learned that when building a layout, you need lots of passage holes and they need to be larger than you think they do. The opportunity was also taken to replace a severed section of the ExpressNet cable. This is the command bus or the data bus that runs around the layout and connects to the throttles. And once again, the passage hole was too small to get the RJ plug through, so I had to cut the cable. So again, lesson learned, these holes can be larger. So a new section of cable was installed with a plug and verified that it could go through the joint into another section. And similarly, underneath Dawson Creek, as you can see in the left photograph, the track bus wires and the auxiliary bus wires were originally short of the end of the layout, and these were extended to the end of the layout and then provided with terminal blocks so they can be extended over to the new section when it gets built. During the layout move, several sections of track near the edge of the layout were damaged. I suppose this is inevitable during the process. This particular example is the BC Hydro spur at Dawson Creek, which curves off the front of the layout. And you can see that the rail's been snagged and ripped out of the tie base. So I removed the feeder wires, disconnected them, and then took away the track and the track roadbed. A new section of track bed was put down. A new section of track was cut and the feeder wires were attached underneath. And the new track section was then glued down and pinned in place. I used Woodland Scenic's foam tack glue to secure the track and the track bed. Underneath, the new feeder wires were soldered to the old feeder wires, and this avoided disturbing the track bus. Prior to the solder work, I threaded on some heat shrink, which was then maneuvered over the solder joints and shrunk on once the soldering was done. And this is the new section of track, and it's been cut back to match the fascia, and the rails have been filed to avoid any future snagging. I'd like to thank the following individuals who have helped with various aspects of preparation of the layout room. And I hope that you've enjoyed this first video update of the layout. I will be back fairly soon with an update for January 2022. Until then, I invite you to like and subscribe to the channel, and also to visit my website at www.bcrdawsonsub.ca. Thank you for watching, and until we see you again, peace be with you.